underneath the trails, and then that trails.
Yeah. No, it's a spreadsheet. Okay, we'll bring the city council work meeting to order for August 2nd. Is there a motion on tonight's agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
Motion made second. Any discussion? Hearing none. To motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. We have an agenda. Jack, Oak Wilt Assistance Report.
I brought the expert on oak wilt with us tonight. Nate Ashford is going to present this item on the agenda.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This is item 3.0, Oak Wilt Informational Update. The city of East Bethel currently addresses oak wilt through informational postings on the community billboard, the city newsletter, and the city newsletter about the risks associated with cutting, pruning, or damaging oak trees during the months of April, May, June, and July. The Public Works Manager also responds to any inquiries from residents with oak wilt questions and will help identify any trees infected with oak wilt upon request. Our current newsletter posting is stated here. Oak wilt is a common fungus in East Bethel that kills hundreds of mature trees annually. New infection sites occur when oaks are damaged, cut, or pruned during the months of April, May, June, and July. Once a new infection site is established, the fungus will spread to neighboring trees through their root systems. It is important to remember not to cut, prune, or any oak trees during these months and limit activities around these trees that could result in damage to that tree. Trees that are infected with oak wilt should be removed the following winter and chipped, burned, or sealed with plastic to limit the number of fungal spores available during the spring months. Infected wood should not be moved off-site, which could potentially create new infection centers. The city of East Bethel does not actively inspect for oak wilt, nor does it enforce any required removals of infected trees. Currently, there are no funds dedicated to oak wilt control, and any time expended on oak wilt inquiries is absorbed into the Public Works budget. Up until the mid-2000s, matching grant money was available through the Minnesota Relief Program administered by the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. Cities could apply for up to $15,000 for oak wilt related projects if they had matching funds set aside in their city budget. A number of communities in Oakland County use these grants to funds to aggressively address oak wilt programs. The Oakland County Parks Department also allowed cities to use their vibratory plow, which is a machine with a large blade used to isolate oak wilt pockets by cutting a 5-foot deep trench around the infected trees. With the end of the relief program and cutbacks to city budgets due to the downturn in the economy around 2008, most cities went to an informational type program with little to no funding. Also around that time, the Anoka County Parks Department purchased a new vibratory plow that is only allowed to be used on property maintained by Anoka County.
So what do we do about oak wilt on the city-owned properties?
We take the trees down and destroy them or burn them or chip them up. We do not do the root cutting. We only have a couple sites that have active infection centers. John Anderson has a lot. That's pretty much what we do on our city property.
And do we survey our properties at all?
Not an active survey. We see it in our day-to-day activities when they flag, and we mark them for removal in the fall, winter.
I remember the property we purchased north of the arena had a lot of oak wilt.
Yeah, we haven't been in there. That one we have not been in.
Have we
I'm
cleared?
thinking more park properties. Yeah, we haven't done anything on that property.
Shouldn't we?
We should take some down in there. We can.
I mean, I think that
if
when we
budgets
purchased
allow.
I thought did we set money aside to do that?
No, we acknowledge.
We adjusted the purchase price because of it, I think.
That's correct.
So in a sense, I took that to read we budgeted to take care of those trees. That's why we reduced the price.
Well, we acknowledge also the need to go in there. I'm not sure if the schedules have permitted that yet. There is, as Nate said, there's some quite a bit in that area, but, we can, adjust our schedules though if that's a priority.
Well, how long have you owned that property now? It's been at least a couple years.
Probably 3 years.
3 years, I think, 2017 or 2018 is when we bought it, 3 to 4 years.
It's almost 4 years
Yeah.
now. It would seem to me that we need to set an example to, if we've got when we purchased the property, knowing it had oak wilt and knowing we were gonna have to take care of it, that's why we got a lowered price on it. I would think we would be addressing that.
We'd probably have to, I don't know if our staff could handle what's required in there. It's pretty extensive with the takeout. Might have to hire a contractor to do a lot of it. We could take care of the stuff on the inside. There's some stuff back in there that would, I don't know, we'd have to cut a road to get back into it. So we don't have anything set aside budget-wise for it. We just absorb it into our budget when we're doing our winter tree removals. If we're plowing snow, some of that stuff gets pushed back.
Would there be any consideration for renting a trencher, going in there and doing all the radiuses of the trees so it doesn't spread?
On that site, I don't think it's gonna do much good. There's so many different pockets in there. I spent a lot of time doing lines in different areas. The best thing for oak wilt to do is to prevent it from getting on your property. Once it's on there, the price just keeps going up, and the amount of trees you have to take out to actively control it, you're almost clear cutting that site. You have to put a line around the trees that are infected, and you have to put a line around the first set of trees that are healthy beyond that, and cut all those trees out to eradicate the fungus on that site. So if you do that in a couple different pockets, pretty soon you might have a couple trees left in the middle. The University of Minnesota, one of the biggest owner of property in East Bethel, does not do any control on their property. That's one of the reasons. It's just too expensive to do on a big property. When I talk to people, I explain to them the cost of give them all kinds of options, but if you have a couple high-value trees on your property, you can do an injection on the tree that is effective for preventing it, but it's only cost-effective for a couple trees at a time. It's nasty once it gets going. It's hard to stop.
Well, for that property in particular, is there a risk of the oak wilt on that property migrating to another property?
You can go up to a quarter mile away. So even all that U of M property behind there, all that, or not U of M, the state of Minnesota property, that's all got, there's a lot of it back in there too. There's a lot of it in that area.
Well, I understand that, we don't have any control over that, but, we've obviously got control over our own property and I mean, the city purchased that property with the intent of using it, that property at some point, which will mean clear cutting it then. And to me, it makes a lot more sense to take care of that problem now, take care of those trees now. Particularly since it's, right on Highway 65, and it's, if the city's if we're gonna preach, good oak wilt management by residents, I think we also need to practice that ourselves. Understanding that that's a bigger property and it's a bigger chunk of work to do to take care of it, but I think we need to take care of it.
Are there any new resources or grants or anything?
Currently, there's nothing that I'm aware of. I've done some researching too to see if there's stuff I'd missed. I haven't found anything. Ham Lake had a really aggressive program, so did the city of Andover. And they would actually go out as a certified tree inspector. You can go on private property and mark infected trees because it's a risk to the trees in the neighborhood. So they would actually go onto private property, mark the trees, and they were forced to take them down. If they didn't take them down, the city would take them down and charge them back. So it was a pretty aggressive program, and they've gone away from that too, just because of the cost involved. And
would the aggressive program actually work?
it's tough to say. It lowered it for sure. There's still oak wilt in Ham Lake. There's still oak wilt in Andover. In order to do it properly, you really have to go in there and take a lot of healthy trees down that people just don't have the will to do. I think, well, maybe it won't get to that tree, and then a couple years later it gets to that tree, and then you're starting over again. But I get, like I say, I go out and talk to people and explain to them if residents have any concerns. The one concern I think that was brought up in an email that the council received was the neighbor's not doing anything and it's spreading to their property, and that's, you can see where that's an issue
It's
too.
the nature of the beast.
Mm-hmm.
The vibratory plow, do you have an idea of what kind of cost is involved in that?
It's a pretty expensive machine. I'd have to call Anoka County and see, but it was over $100,000 for the machine.
Over 100,000?
Yeah.
I know a trencher will work just as well.
It has to have a 5-foot blade. Some of the
Mhm.
trenchers weren't able to get that deep, so they went to this one. It's made by Vermeer. It has tracks on it because you have to get through a lot of pretty rough terrain in order to make it work. But
But that's only for trying to isolate a center.
correct. Yeah.
If there's an area that has oak wilt, it's just tearing it down, right? I mean, are you taking stumps out as well?
You're supposed to treat the stumps with a herbicide of the healthy trees that are alongside of the infected one, because it can last in the stumps for a long time. Like we've seen it 5-6 years with nothing, and all of a sudden, boom, it's back again.
So if the trees are taken down and the stumps are treated, then that's fine? Is that how you treat it, take care of it?
Can you tell me how you identify it?
This time of year is the best time to look for it. You'll see it looks like a oak tree going into fall colors almost right now. It starts at the top of the tree and works its way kind of down and into the middle of the tree. And somebody will be mowing their lawn and also they'll have a bunch of leaves in their yard, and they'll look up, and that's usually a guaranteed indicator that that's what's happening. It's mainly on red oaks. They're the ones that have a pointed leaf tip. We do have white oaks and bur oaks. They can last a lot longer with it, but we have a lot of red oaks on our sandy soil here. That's what spreads
And then
the
it
most.
kills the tree?
Kills the tree on a red oak in about 6 weeks. The whole tree will be dead.
Yeah, it's pretty fast.
Yeah.
But then it spreads through roots too,
So
and oaks intermix their
you grow together
roots, so.
and kind of make a common root system. Yeah, we can start taking a look and seeing what we got for costs and time to start tackling some of that stuff over there on next to the arena.
Well, I think, I mean, at least have a plan on getting that cleared out, because I know when we had the discussion, it's the reason why we got a reduced price, is we knew, I forgot what the amount was, but, you know, we knew we were gonna have to take care of these trees, and then
And the value's dropping when
and then we didn't do anything with it, so. And it's 4 years of having these dead, diseased trees laying there, so.
If I recall correctly, I believe when we started negotiations on that property, that the asking price was 180 and we paid 165.
Yeah,
And-
I remember
yeah,
10, 15 grand or
yeah.
something like that for the trees. I think, well, you even looked at it, I think you priced it out.
We went out there and identified the pockets, kind of on site and then through with the aerial photo, but they were kind of spread out all over.
Did we get a bid?
We never bid it out on that one, I don't think. Do you call her getting a bid, Jack?
No.
I don't remember getting a bid. I think we just used an estimate based on the number of trees that had to come out
Okay.
in the control.
So that's a bit of a sidebar, I think we gotta keep pursuing, but in terms of the city and not having a program, I mean, it's up here for discussion, so. How much effort would it be to identify properties that are suspected to have oak wilt?
It would take a tree inspector the better part of a month to get through the city. So we'd have to have an employee do that for pretty much a month time to get through the city.
Would it have to be a tree inspector?
You have to be a certified tree inspector to do it through.
I mean, I'm thinking more of a drive-by. You know, it'd be nice to know how widespread of a problem, what part of the areas of the city is more of a problem. I mean, I think.
From my own experience, I think it's kind of pretty even throughout the whole city.
Really?
Yeah, especially areas that have, large stands of oaks, obviously. What caused a lot of the infection sites was in the early nineties. Anoka County was the oak bolt capital of the world. And it's because of our sandy soils here and the development that was taking place. A lot of cities didn't have ordinances in place. There wasn't a lot of knowledge of the public of oak wilt, and there wasn't a lot of research in it yet either on how to control it. So when these new housing developments went in, contractors cleared out the trees, put the roads in, built the houses, and a couple years later, all the oaks started dying. So now it's moved up more into Sherburne and Isani and those other kind of outer ring areas where a lot of development took place, but we still have plenty in Anoka County. So we used to do the survey in Ham Lake. This was 15 years ago, and it would take over a month for a person to do. And they're about 33% smaller land area than us.
Oh, and is
But-
that just driving by?
You'd have to drive by, number the tree and record it, or record the location and notify the property owner.
Would it be any faster using a drone identifying trees?
You can identify them, you still have to
Go on,
locate
do it.
property lines, figure out
Sure.
whose tree it is. It gets to be kind of extensive, yeah. And then sometimes you have to actually be on site to identify it. You can get a pretty good idea, but there's a couple other things that kind of mimic it too. There's a insect that they have around here called a two-line chestnut borer that kind of does the same damage to oak trees. Slower, but looks the same.
What I'm thinking of is more of a targeted informational campaign. If we know, which properties have oak wilt on it, with, doing a direct mailing to them just out of, information, out of courtesy, basically. We're not enforcing anything. It's just letting them know they have oak wilt. This is what it is. Yeah, man, I'm sure a lot of people don't have an idea what it is. Maybe they've heard of it,
Or
but don't know it. But
dead tree's just a dead tree to them.
right. And that way they can be informed, and, they can call the city if they want more information, if they want to work with somebody, what needs to be done. To me, that would, we get some people that may actively address it if they know they have it. If they got one tree with oak wilt and they got a 5-acre lot of oaks, it's like, I would hope they would want to address that right away.
Yeah, you
But
want
if they don't know any better, by the time, a year or two goes by, all of a sudden a quarter of their forest is infected, so.
what if we did a bigger article in the newsletter that took up like most of a page or something too, that then it goes out to everybody? It's not a direct mailing, but I think it'd be kind of hard to, I don't know if I could figure out exactly where we would do it. I mean, there's a few neighborhoods that are a little bit worse off the top of my head, but it's pretty widespread.
But it's, we can't assume everyone reads the newsletter, and again, they may, even though they read it, they still may not understand it. But if I get a letter saying, we identified oak wilt in your property, I would think if I didn't know anything, first I'd be shocked. It's like, what the heck is this? What's wrong with my property? And, they'll look into it a little bit more, maybe do something about it. So to me, it's just more of a direct informational thing. And a service too, so.
Yep.
So what's your thinking about more, at least in the initial part of this, would be just a drive-by survey to try just to identify larger concentrations of this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what needs to be done to properly identify it. I'm just off the top of my head, a drive-by survey, or even, I mean, our maintenance guys are on every road, at least once a month, right? So it's,
Yeah.
if they know what to look for, they can write it down, and maybe it's a follow-up, I don't know. I'm just thinking of an easier way rather than doing a full-blown survey. Man, I think I remember when Ham Lake had their program, and I kind of remember that, and that was maybe a little more sophisticated than I'm thinking of. But if there's a way of knowing, if we knew which properties, and we had it in our GIS system, say there's oak wilt identified on this property, and we sent them a letter, and that way they know. I mean, it's a service.
Yep.
And yet supposed, idea to help everything.
I think that would be pretty easy to implement. We wouldn't you know, we wouldn't be able to get all of them, but we definitely could knock some of them out that we see.
Well, I don't know, maybe think about it and, you know, come up with a proposal on how you would do such a thing, and this is the time of year to
If we're
look.
gonna do it, we need to do
We
it.
need to do it
this
right
month,
away,
Basically,
so,
August is the month
yeah.
to do it. And we could just have a stack of letters in our truck too, and just drop one off on a door hanger for them if we needed to too.
And get a short-term forestry intern, maybe, you never know.
Yeah, or at least, do a short-term thing right now, this next month, and then, but set it up for a more intensive, program next August.
Well, I think too, is, I don't, perhaps it's not something we have to like complete the whole survey of the city before we do something. You know, if we get into Shawnee Woods or something and see something, it's like, well, don't wait, just get it into the,
Yeah.
you know, whatever database we have, and then get a letter sent out.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, so it's an ongoing progress kind of thing, so.
Yeah.
And then again, with the hope that, you know, folks will do something about their trees, and unfortunately, we have no tools to help them out financially, so.
And in the past, the grant program that was here, which I think went away in about 2006, 2007, we had very limited funds to do anything with. I think there were some monies that would match the homeowner's contribution towards it. But I don't recall us, when I was here, and it was here around 2 years, Terry used to be our tree manager. And he went out, I went out with him a couple times, and we spoke to some residents and had some questions. And basically, all he did was identify whether there was oak wilt present or not. We never had any grant applications for the program since I've been
Yeah.
here.
It's just, I think part of the problem is this whole thing is also fighting human nature. You know, people don't remove their dead trees until they fall. It's kind of the usual thing is, so.
Would there be any benefit in, talking with Rivard and seeing if there'd be any way to, maybe not partner up, but, if on our flyers we just say contact a tree service, people don't know who to contact, but if, on the flyers it says, you can contact Rivard Tree Service, if you're an East Bethel resident, you'll get 5% off. If you're taking out your oak wilt trees or something, I'm just spitballing. But if that would be an incentive, if Rivard would work with the city on that.
It's a possibility. I always try and shy away from recommending any contractors for anything. I have a list of tree contractors that like everybody can think of, and I just give them that. I don't specifically recommend a single contractor for anything.
Or at least include tree contractors on that.
Yep. I do give that up to people already when they ask for it. It's about, I think there's about 15 contractors on there.
Are the contractors allowed to commercially use the wood chips? I mean,
Yes, once it's shipped,
it is,
it's good
okay,
for anything.
okay.
Yep.
So chips don't have to stay on site?
Nope.
All right.
Just removing that outer bark from the tree. Underneath there, it's a fungal spore mat about the size of a fist, and you can smell them in the springtime. They smell like fermenting beer. You can walk through the woods once you know what it smells like, you can smell it on the woods. But it pushes the bark out and it attracts the insects. They land on that and feed, and then they fly to damaged oak trees. When they feed on that damaged tree, the spores on their body actually infect the tree. So it's an insect vector that actually carries the spores to the infected trees, or to the new trees.
Mm.
So that's what they're active in the springtime, and the spores are active in the springtime. So that's why they don't want any damage on oaks in the spring. So.
Okay. Anything else to discuss on this? So you'll look at creating a proposal for surveying the city, identifying properties, and then also a plan for dealing with our city-owned property.
Yep.
So reading this, Anoka County had a vibratory plow that they shared, but they got a new one and they don't share it anymore? Is that what I get out of this?
They owned one, and as part of their grant, they helped, the cities could rent it for a couple weeks, and we all took turns using it. It tended to get beat up from certain cities using it, and then they'd have to do a lot of, county would have to do a lot of repairs on it. I think they just got to the point where it was too hard for them. They just wanted to be able to control it for their property, and they bought that brand new one. I seem to recall it was even, it might have been around like $200,000, I want to say. It was expensive at the time.
Yeah, I remember they used to run articles in the Union and the Ham Laker about the plow and availability of it and so on.
Yep.
And they had a pretty active tree council with one person in particular was pretty active.
Right.
So I think
Yep.
once he left, that kind of fizzled out a little bit, so.
Yep. And Blaine and Andover both had kind of similar plans at one time too, so.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, I have one more question. Why are none of the other cities doing anything about it? Did they deem it just not serious enough? And
It was,
that we're concerned about it?
I think it was part of it was cost, and part of it was a change in political culture. The thought of the city coming onto private property and forcing people to do stuff didn't sit well with some of them.
Yeah, because, I mean, part of me thinks, well, just let nature take its course and trees are gonna die. They die every year. But the other part of me is like, well, I don't want my neighbor's trees infecting my trees either.
Right.
So,
That's what the,
it's
yep,
like,
that's
well,
exactly it in a nutshell right there.
Yeah, unfortunately, unless you have some way of enforcing it, it's kind of like keeping dandelions out of your yard. Unless your neighbor does the same thing,
Yeah.
it's gonna be hard to eradicate the problem.
Well, and I think that's where, better education and really understanding the devastation that happens to those trees,
Yep.
Oaks are one of the slowest growing trees we have, and it takes a little while to replace an oak tree, so. Okay,
All right, thank you.
Nate, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Nate.
2022 preliminary budget discussion, Jack.
The City Finance Committee met with city staff on May 6th and June 22nd to review and discuss the 2022 budget inputs and assumptions. The Finance Committee also discussed the city general fund balance, the actual city financial performance for the past 2 years, and the city's overall debt service requirements. After the initial Finance Committee meeting, the base budget was submitted to department heads for preparation of their individual department budgets. Finally, the proposed budget was submitted to the City Council at their July 6, 2021 work session for discussion. The overall 2022 proposed general fund expenditure budget is projected to increase by 5%, or $303,100. This expenditure increase would then result in a corresponding levy increase of 1.9%, or $114,100 in order to balance the 2022 budget. That amount would be 2.2% if the EDA and HRA special levies are added to the general fund. This was a question that you asked at the last meeting, Steve. So if we put those into the general fund instead of the 1.9% levy increase, we'd be looking at a 2.2% levy increase. So at this time, I'm available to review or answer any questions concerning the 2022 proposed city budget.
Any questions for staff? One of the things we discussed, I think it was last meeting, about the additional added person, the finance coordinator position. And there was some discussion, then is there any further discussion on that position? I think Suzanne,
No, I still don't think that, position is necessary at this time. I don't think we should be increasing the levy at all. And I looked at this and I'm like, but we're getting rid of, where is it? The other, levies that, expired, 129K and 65K. So I'm thinking use that money for everything else, and we shouldn't be raising taxes. This is really a bad time. It's a hard time for our residents, for everybody in the state. Inflation is out of control. Taxes just went up on almost everybody. And a lot of people are really struggling, and if we could do anything, I'd want to see given a credit to residents not raising taxes again. So that's my mantra. I know I'm outvoted on this, but that's where I stand. We shouldn't be raising anything. Everything should stay as same as it possibly can, except for the union contracts that we already voted on.
You expressed an interest in talking with our finance director about this position. Have you met with him yet?
I have not. I've actually been out of town. I haven't even had any kind of internet or phone service. I just got back today from the UP, and so I haven't had time to do anything.
Okay. I would encourage a meeting with him, talk about this position.
I understand, and I know where I stand on things, and I don't know that I need to talk to anybody. I will. I mean, I like talking to him. I think he's a great person, but
the last time we discussed, you're expressing concern that there wasn't an evaluation for the need for this person.
To justify.
And I think that's why I encouraged you to talk to our finance director, who can give you a far better explanation of the need than we could.
Of why it was recommended. And it's not the first year that it's been recommended either.
Yeah. But what I'm hearing from your statement now is that doesn't matter because
well, that's
well, you just said you're voting this way strictly because of the money that's involved.
Well, it's a balance thing, yes. I mean, even if we needed it, I would say we have to shuffle money around and already find the money that we have. We have a budget. We shouldn't be increasing the budget. We should follow the budget that we have and not increase it. That's how I feel, and there is I've seen no data, no proof that we need this position, which is why you guys want me to go talk to the city staff. But and I might, but my days are really full. So.
Okay. So, well, I mean, you're clear on where you stand, so that helps the rest of us too. So.
Because I was a little leery too about it, but I sat with Mike for an hour on Monday, and believe me, it's worth sitting with him for an hour, because you'll change your tune real quick.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate that.
Okay, are there any other, I don't think we had any other budget matters we were discussing before. Is there anything else?
Just a question, I guess, for Jack. We had the sheriff present their budget for next year. How did that line up with what was projected?
That matches it exactly, the 1.4% increase in the $1.17 million budget. So that was what we received from them, and that's what we got.
Okay.
And so then the only other bid we don't have is from Metro INET for the internet?
That's correct.
When are we expecting that?
It could be probably September or October. It may even be after the budget's
Oh,
approved,
okay.
or the preliminary budgets. We would have the opportunity, though, to go back and adjust if it came up too much to cut things, but it usually runs after our preliminary budget's approval.
All right. As we have with other contractors and stuff in the past, can we advise them to please give us their budgets well before cities do their own budgets?
You know, every city that's a member of that has been on them continuously every year for that, and they always seem to lag behind on providing us that number, so we'll keep on them to see if we can't get it a little earlier.
Hey, we got the watersheds to get the budgets ahead of time,
Yeah.
so that only took years to do that, so. Okay, is there anything else on budget tonight?
So we'll have set the preliminary budget September 13th. Is that what we're looking at?
That's correct. That will be the submission of the preliminary budget unless this continues to be a discussion at a further council meeting.
And,
That gives us one more council meeting after that.
One
right?
more work meeting, correct.
and at that meeting, we set the top mark, but we can always lower it. We can't increase it from
That-
that point forward.
That's correct.
Okay, so that is one consideration, Suzanne, that will come to the September 13th meeting with proposed, at that time. We can't increase it after that, but we can lower it going into December.
Yes, I understand that.
So if you have more questions or concerns about that position, or if rest of staff changes their mind, the rest of council changes their mind. So I think that's all I have.
Okay, anything else on budget? Otherwise, we'll move on. All right, move on to cable franchise fee discussion.
Concerns regarding cable franchise fees were discussed at the July 6, 2021 City Council work meeting. Per FCC regulations, the maximum fee amount that can be charged is 5% of gross revenues. The city has received this fee from Midco since its purchase of US Cable, the city's prior cable provider, in 2011. US Cable was required to collect the 5% franchise fee and distribute these proceeds to the city during the term of their contract. The city is projected to receive approximately $66,500 in franchise fees from Midco in 2022. The franchise fee is received in monthly installments and placed in the city's general fund. There are currently 898 video subscribers in East Bethel as of June 30th, 2021, and this represents approximately 20% of the households within the city. This number has remained relatively unchanged over the past decade. In addition to the franchise fee, the city collects a PEG, which is an acronym. It's called Public Education and Government. It's for cable channels to use for those services. For Midco, and this fee is 45 cents a month charged to each customer to supplement the expenses of and improvements to our public channel broadcast equipment. This charge has generated approximately $5,000 per year and will vary with the number of annual subscribers. This is the only franchise fee that the city receives, and it is paid by customers that are subscribers to Midco's video service. The cost of the individual subscriber is approximately $73 per year. Discussion on this item at the July 6, 2021 work meeting involved the fairness of the franchise fees collected from this segment of city residents and use of the funds relative to any benefits received by these taxpayers. Points were made regarding the disparity of this particular situation, along with considerations of keeping all or a portion of the franchise fees in place. The minutes of the July 6 work meeting are included in your packet to summarize that discussion. If a reduction or elimination of the fee is the council's direction, the franchise fee can be amended at any time. As this was not a time-sensitive matter, this matter was recommended for continued discussion, which we are holding tonight. Some of the primary options to consider for the franchise fee discussions are, number one, eliminate the franchise fee entirely. Essentially, this is revenue collected only from subscribers to the system, but may be used for the benefit of all city residents, thus placing a disproportionate burden on fee payers. Second option could be to retain the franchise fee and designate these funds for a specific use, such as city broadcast system upgrades and/or reserve funds to cost share extension projects with Midco to those areas that do not meet Midco's standard for service provision, or to retain the franchise fee and keep those revenues in the general fund, as franchise fees are a cost of rent to the grantee for using the city right-of-way for their infrastructure. The availability of cable service add value to those properties that pay the franchise fees. And these fees entirely or in part are used to support the operation of the city's video broadcast and recording operations. PEG fees are restricted to use for cable channel 10, recording and broadcast equipment repair, upgrades, and replacement. From a purely financial standpoint, elimination of the franchise fee would reduce city revenues by $66,500 and increase the proposed levy for 2022 by an additional 0.011%. Franchise fees currently cover employee time using the operation of Channel 10, recording meetings, archiving recordings for rebroadcast, and system costs that exceed PEG fee revenues. At each of your seats, I put a handout that shows what the costs are on our broadcast channel that are over and above the PEG fees. I think that figure comes to about $13,044, and these are basically for our Dropbox license, our Vibit license, which is the software license we use to run all of our recordings in the Channel 10 broadcast. Service calls to EPA, which is our main contractor for issues here, which run about $500 a year. Cost for a video technician, and for Carrie Frost, who does essentially most of the work for downloading, setup, formatting, and index for approximately 66 meetings a year. And Cindy Hilliard's time for what she spends on Channel 10, which is about $792 a year. So the PEG fees do not cover this because currently we've earmarked the PEG fees to cover the cost of the last improvement project we did here for City Hall, which was $96,000. So with what little we receive in PEG fees, it'll take about 18 to 20 years to actually amortize that. So we do have cost over and above the PEG fees, and currently they're running about $13,000 a year.
So, Steve, you're considering wanting to eliminate the franchise fees. I think we briefly discussed at a meeting that you weren't at, and if we eliminate it, it's okay, but I would like to not see that happen until next year and start with 1% at a time. I believe it's at 5% right now. That if we lower it to 4, then 3 for the next year, so that our finance director can budget that. And then instead of those fees going directly into the general fund, that they would be put into a fund set up just for technology, for either paying off the video system that we have, or to start funding the next replacement that will no doubt have to happen with how technologies change. And I believe, Jack, you're saying that some of the recording equipment back there will probably have to be replaced sooner rather than later. So that these fees would go directly into a technology fund just for that,
Yeah,
instead of going into the.
That's gonna be something we will have to do. There's some things back there that wasn't addressed in this last improvements that we did, but in order to keep up with the technology, and communications is such an important part of what we do, and maybe to be able to reach out and do some other things, there will be some considerations for improvement to that. We do have some other funding sources, but it would be good to have some funds earmarked, probably especially for that, because that's not really considered government buildings. But, the other thing that I was thinking too, if we wanted to earmark certain funds, is, Midco will do cost sharing with the city. Like, if you don't meet that 25 density per mile requirement that they have, let's say you had 20 houses per mile, then Midco could do the 80% of the cost and maybe the city could do 20. The only thing is there, you know, you're kind of picking areas that are winners or losers. We'd have to have a real specialized plan for that. Or some of this funds, you know, we're talking about, we're gonna be interviewing these broadband, consultants here probably in early September, and, you know, maybe we ought to look at start setting up some monies for the broadband expansion, because the city's probably gonna be required to cost participate in that to make it happen. But those are some of the things that if we do keep the franchise fee or a part of it, I think we should probably designate that for a specific use.
Yeah, so instead of 5%, we say settle on 2.5 instead of, so instead of pulling in 66,000 roughly, we're pulling in 33 and earmarking that for specific purposes that it will be needed to, rather than take monies out of the general fund to pay for technology and cable services that essentially only people on internet or hooked to the cable service begin to benefit from.
Yeah, one thing about it, if we designate it for extension projects, this would kind of be like seed money, because I would envision we would cost participate, but as a requirement of the city's participation in that is those benefiting property owners would be specially assessed. So then that money would roll back into the city so we could continue that. Then those other areas that are just on the borderline of being economically feasible to serve, and then get to the point where maybe we could expand it out a little bit more, but it would be something more like a revolving, not a loan fund, but a revolving program to extend services that would be paid for, the city's portion at least, by those benefiting users.
I mean, I guess I understand the approach of, you know, lowering the percentage to soften the blow budget-wise. I can understand that. It doesn't change the fact that the monies coming into this fund come from 20% of our residents, that 100% of the residents benefit from. You know, even this listing of the cable broadcast, I know it's related to it, but everyone benefits from the recordings of our meetings and all that. It's not just the cable users. Especially now we've got everything on YouTube and on the web, and you know, it's not just cable 10. So even the PEG things, I'm uncomfortable with from that aspect. And I guess I just did some quick calcs just to put it in perspective. You know, right? You said 20% of our residents have cable, so they'll be subjected to franchise fees, which is roughly $73.
Correct.
If that, so at $65,000 of revenue, if it were changed, there was no franchise fee, and assume that 65 then would have to be levied out evenly, then the effect on each individual person then is $15 a year. So 80% of the households will have their taxes go up by $15 a year, but 20% of them have their taxes go down by $58 a year, which is, that's substantial. I mean, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. And all these franchise fees are used to pay for other things. It's not, I said this before, it's not specific to, you know, improving the quality of the cable broadcast or you know, something where they see a direct benefit. And so I understand the impact on budget, you know, and it's a bigger hit, but I'm just totally uncomfortable with using franchise fees. Because if that's the case, I mean, again, it's just a way for cities to generate revenue. Then why aren't we charging franchise fees to Connexus or to NSP or, you know, or Centerpoint, where we, you know, we can be charging franchise fees, and then we could be charging everyone franchise fees and then it's revenue. It's still taxes from, it's regressive, because it's, everyone gets taxed the same thing. So it's not the way to do it, but some cities do that, So to me, it's just, and I'm not saying we're being sneaky about it, but it just soon raise our revenue on the fairest way we can, so. So that's where I sit on, so. But I may support a reduction, a graduated reduction.
Yeah. Graduate, I would see it's
I wouldn't want-
easier to plan for.
I wouldn't want 5 years out, but, So is there a direction that we want to go with this?
Well, I kinda agree with Brian, at least for 2022, because we've already got, otherwise you're gonna have to find $66,000 in cuts. You're gonna have to raise the levy up to be over
Yeah.
2%, so at least, for this year, and then next year bring it up again, and we can go from there.
Yeah, say propose that 4% for next year, and I suppose, instead of going into the general fund, while those fees are coming in, put it into a specific technology fund that will benefit technology, not just general fund.
If you wanted to do it that way and continue the franchise fee for 2022, though, that would give us ample time to relook at this when we start our budget hearings and meetings in the spring of next year, and possibly come up with some other solutions for revenues, and just go in with the assumption that revenue's not there.
Do you really think that a lot of people have a problem with this franchise fee that are paying?
I think most people don't know about it,
I,
yes.
I honestly, we use Midco for internet, not for cable. So that 20%, is that just the cable users, or is that the 20% that use Midco, period?
That's 20% that subscribe to their video services, but I'm certain that most, if not all those, probably have internet service with them.
But the internet doesn't get charged the franchise fee.
No, the internet, this is only on the cable franchise fee, because we can't do that because of FCC regulations. And, I think the only point to make there is what I see that residents get that pay the franchise fee is the cable and the internet add extreme value to their property and home, especially over those that don't have it. So if you live in East Bethel and your only option is to get satellite TV, and your neighbor a quarter mile down the road has cable and internet, if you go to sell your house, you're probably gonna be able to get more from it for that. But from the city standpoint, we're open to do whatever you wanna do from the budget standpoint. The franchise fee has always been a source of discussion, and it's been one that's been questionable at times. Like Steve says, it's not a fee, it's a tax.
Yeah.
No matter how you talk about it, it's still a tax. So, and it is regressive, it's not graduated, or it's not based on valuation, it's just percent across the board based on what their general revenues are that we receive, and then it's passed along to the customers, and they pay that, and we get our share of it, so.
I think I read that City of Ramsey is going through this right now. And I thought I read they just, I don't know if they eliminated all of them, but they're eliminating franchise fees there. For the same reasons. So. Is there a direction that we want to give staff on this? I mean, Brian has his proposal, I guess.
I'm I'm in favor of just leaving it for the year, and then we can always discuss, 4%, or if we wanna eliminate it, or
Yeah,
let's see what kind of revenue we get in, maybe something will change after 2022, we'll get revenue that'll cover this.
I would say, I'd propose to keep it as is for this year,
Yeah.
next year's budget. Bring it back with, say, 1 to 2% reduction and have the remaining funds to go into a specific technology fund with that proposal.
Where do you sit on it?
I
I guess the question is, do we do anything now to change the 5% that's in the
think we
contract?
could just leave it alone for now. I think a lot of people are going, the other 80% are not gonna be happy about even a $60 a year, tax increase, so it's kind of up in the air. I mean, I use Midco, I suppose I don't know if I pay it or not, so, but I love Midco, so, and I don't know, I think, that what the city is using the money for is very useful, and it benefits everybody.
Just so you number right, it's $15 a year per resident, per house, not 50. When I said if we took that franchise fee and spread it out amongst the 4,500 homes,
Oh, yeah,
it's
okay.
15.15, so.
And then the people who pay it are getting a.
And then the one who's paying 70, they have a $58 reduction in their taxes, so.
Yeah, I said it wrong, but I understood what you said.
Well, not in their taxes, but in their effective tax, so.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, so consensus is we'll just take this up next year, so. All right. On to public forum discussion.
The public forum segment of the East Bethel City Council agenda provides an opportunity for residents to address council on items not included on the agenda. Over the years, this item has been scheduled at various time slots on the council agenda, ranging from the last item on the agenda to its current placement prior to the start and separate from the regular council meeting. As a result of discussions on this subject at the September 26th and October 3rd, 2018 City Council meeting, council approved scheduling the public hearing as a separate item prior to each regular meeting. In addition to the proposed agenda change, council approved that the public forum will not be broadcast or rebroadcast on Channel 10 or archived as a website video playback. Permanent records of the public forum will be stored on disk for the period required by state statute record retention schedules. Discussion of returning the public forum to an item in the body of the council meeting agenda was requested as an addition to the agenda for tonight's meeting by Councilperson Mundell. This request would also include the live broadcast and archived replay within the council meeting media access. Staff recommends the council discuss the format of the council agenda template and provide direction to staff as to their preference for the posting of the public forum on the agenda and to any changes in the protocols for this item.
Brian.
So I brought this up, I was on council when we changed it. We tried something different. And although it does work, reviewing it with staff, that it adds more work to staff to set it up and then to separate the videos, to set up different minutes, to do this, do that, and it would be easier on staff just for the sake of bringing it back into a regular council meeting.
I was under the impression that during this whole time, we've only had a couple public forums.
We've had, when we were virtual, we had one public forum, and then when we went back to live meetings, we've had two.
And before we went virtual, the format we have right now, separate meetings, is what we had before COVID hit.
That's correct. We started that in October of 2018.
I think maybe we had one meeting,
Actually, we had,
maybe two.
no, we had, that was COVID hit March of 2019. We started
Right.
this in October of 2018.
Yeah,
But we didn't have too many public,
I only remember
Yeah,
two
yeah.
in the whole time before COVID hit.
yeah,
We had one during the virtual,
correct,
and then we've had
two.
two since we started. And 4 of those 5 were the same person, the same subject matter. So I don't know how much work it's been to separate videos, because we haven't had any really, so.
Well, it's a little more problem setting it up, splitting it up. Now that we've gone, now there's another set of minutes, which Carrie has to she has to download those and send them in to the time saver standards to get those done. But, it's a little more work to do it this way. It's not overwhelming, but it was much easier to do it once we had the older format. But the question is this gonna be conducive to our meetings? And the other thing too is, if we do decide this, or even if we don't, do we wanna look at certain protocols we currently have? I think one of them is that we currently state that if there's an item on the agenda, then you can't address it at public forum. I've heard several complaints about that say people, well, we don't know what's on the agenda till it comes out, and then we can't speak about it at public forum. And also the fact that we may want to enforce some of the rules that we have for protocol on public forum, which involve essentially what are personal attacks on people. Those are some of the things that we might want to discuss also.
Well, I just want to remind us, council, the reason why we did this is because we were having individuals abuse the public forum and using it for broadcast purposes, right? And I think the discussion we had was one way to take that whole facet out of this process is not to broadcast it. And I found it very interesting that there's public forum, I think the first 2 meetings after we started a new format, both complaining about the format, and then we had nothing. We had no one came to public forum up until we had that one about Lever Street, which is totally different issue. And then we didn't have anyone come to the public forum during the whole COVID, which we had the public forum, no one did. And as soon as we go to live meetings and there's a live audience, all of a sudden we've got the same players making the same complaints in front of an audience. So to me, we're just going right back to the reason why we changed it. So, and we emphasize so many times that it doesn't negatively affect the ability for people to contact council members, city council, staff. There's all kinds of means of communication now. The only thing we didn't want to do is broadcast on TV to give them that soapbox.
Maybe we should talk about what we can do to prevent that. Say, can we cut the mic off from a speaker? Can we just mute a video during a speaker, so effectively during a rebroadcast, there's no sound on the video while they're talking if they're abusing it? Can we do things like that?
Well, I think you've seen the struggles we've had to control.
I've sat here through a lot of them, yep.
And
I totally
and
understand.
I don't see this, and I don't see it being broadcast on TV helping that try to control people that are out of control.
Yeah.
The whole purpose is to communicate to the council. What does it matter if it's on TV? That's my point, so.
Well, I just hate to see select individuals ruin something that is meant for all of our citizens to take advantage of.
See, Jack, I don't know if you can talk to Chris, and him and I had a conversation that we don't have to let somebody from another city talk at public forum. There's a gray line there, but we do not have to let them speak at a public forum. I'd like to get, you know, where that gray line.
That, you talked to Chris Nelson about that?
Yes.
Because he
Yeah.
told me the exact same
Yeah.
opposite of that.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
see,
yeah.
what Mark Veerling years ago said, it really wasn't a good idea, but I talked to Chris and he says, you don't have to, but there's some really,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I
lines
should
there.
say he was really uncomfortable with it, so.
oh.
Yeah, it's,
And, you know,
But I'd like to find out where that, you know, what he means by that.
well, it's First Amendment rights, and, you know, we talked to Mark Veerling about this, and Mark said, you can do it, but you better be careful, and he advised not to do that.
Okay.
Well, and I don't want to restrict it to non-residents, because we may have someone from an organization want to make a presentation, or there is, you know, people from neighboring cities that want to make a presentation, so. I
No,
mean,
I'm not
we're
saying
we're
things like
letting this,
that,
we're
because-
letting this one kind of incident drive this, and
Yes.
it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate, so.
Well, I'm gonna put my 2 cents in this one. A lot of people have told me that they don't come up here and talk because of the way it was changed, and they were very upset about how it was changed. And I really never watched any of the old, meetings from the way it was before, where people were allowed to come up and it be broadcast, so I really don't know. I just know that a lot of people have complained that they want it back to the old ways. They want, their opinions heard out there, and, this is not from the one person you guys have been mentioning. So, this is from maybe 4 or 5 other people who said they used to come up here and talk, and they don't even bother because the city has no transparency. That's their comments.
When those folks you spoke to, when they say, you know, they want their message heard by council, or heard by
They
everyone?
want everything out in the open by the whole city. They want to know, the city to know whatever issue it is that they are going through that is not being responded to by the city, is what.
And we don't respond to in the public forum either.
Well, I
So, I mean, the
understand.
idea is to bring something to
They have an
council and
issue,
then go
they
from
want-
there.
They want the city to know what their issue is, and the city did not do anything about their issue. And part of it is they think that other people are going through the same issues, and they want it brought to light to let them know that other people are not alone. So that's my opinion. I think it should be, part of the meeting and broadcast, but the minute somebody uses somebody's name, or, they have to be silenced somehow too, you know, breaking any private data rights.
Well, and I agree. I mean, I'd much rather have the public forum on as a regular meeting as well. You know, we made that change to try to deal with the situation that we had, so. And it's a situation, I don't think that has changed. That's my whole concern, is we're going back to how it was, even though the situation hasn't changed, so.
Well, I just want to bring it up, say test the waters and see what everybody's opinion is. If it's a good idea, bad idea. So, but I just wanted to, it's something that should be discussed. That's all. If we leave it the way it is, then it's left the way it is.
Any further discussion on this? Or direction?
I just would leave it the way it is. I don't know, it doesn't matter to me, but it's good like this, so.
Well, I guess I'll say this, if there's any residents from East Bethel watching this meeting and have an opinion, come to our next public forum and bring it up to us. It's at 6:45 before the meeting.
All right, any further discussion on this? right, any other items, Jack?
I have two things I'd like to mention. Number one, we have two more dangerous dog hearings, or potentially dangerous dog hearings. We'll have in August and September, and I was curious, I've had some comments that think maybe we might want to discuss adding a third category. Currently, we have the choice between declaring it a potentially dangerous dog or a dangerous dog, and there might be a lesser category it might be worthwhile to consider, which would be like, say, a nuisance dog or something like that. So these dogs too, while they may not be a problem, which was part of the discussion we had maybe at the last hearing we had last week, could be classified that, penalties or requirements for addressing their situation could be modified, but I'm just bringing that up to see if council wants to discuss that. Is a possible amendment to the ordinance.
I brought it up with Jack in the past, and, being a participant in many, many dangerous dog hearings, it's not fun to have to conduct, and I think that there is something missing where if we declare, my understanding is if we declare it a non-dangerous dog, then everything goes away on the dog and there's no file on the dog. So if past events have happened with that dog, we may not know about it. We had 2 meetings ago where the dog actually bit an individual and broke the skin. And I would be more comfortable with declaring it a non-dangerous dog, but we keep a file on it. So if another occurrence happens, it's in our system.
We keep, that goes in the property file
That goes,
anyway.
that does, whether it's sustained, modified, or removed, we
We have
keep,
record of it.
we put that in the property file, correct?
Okay, my impression was in the past that there was no record of it. And so that's why.
Should be.
There is, there's a,
Remember when we did the ordinance, we wanted
Yeah.
to make sure that was in the record, so.
Especially the police are called, there's records, all kinds of records.
Yeah, but I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that if there was another way to,
I don't know, like my first reaction when you say a third category of nuisance dogs, is like, that's all our agenda is gonna be then, is dealing with dogs. And I don't think that's where,
well, I think it would be those that you have to file a police report that there's been an issue. That could be, it's like the last potentially dangerous dog hearing we had, the police report said it was a dog running loose, but based on what was supplied us, it did meet one of the criteria for a potentially dangerous dog. And due to the situation involved in the neighborhood, that's why we made the declaration. We had the discussion and the declaration was removed. But, maybe that's a nuisance dog. I'm just.
so you're talking about the one in Whispering Aspen we just did?
Correct.
I think that was absolutely correct. That was a potentially dangerous dog. I mean, I'm sorry, if that 170-pound dog is knocking over a 120-pound person that could have got hurt, I mean, it's not biting, which is normally what we think about, but there's still, there's still that risk. So I don't think that was like miscategorized.
No.
So if that's what you're thinking, but.
No, well, I don't really think that, but what I'm just thinking is my discussions with Brian and some other people too, is if there is any interest in exploring another category. I realize that may complicate things, but is there something you would like us to do to bring back any more information, or are you interested in just keeping with the two standards that we currently have?
well, I brought it up just for the sake of if it's declared a non-dangerous dog, that there's a record kept of it.
But it sounds like.
But as long as there is, then I feel better about it. That's the one thing that I was just, where we have conditions that, you say, okay, it's a potentially dangerous dog, and we put condition, 1, 4 and 5 on it, which is keeping it on a leash, post signs, that instead of doing all that, have a condition where it's not a non-dangerous dog, with the exception of keeping this record on file. Something like that. That was my thought. But if it's already kept on file, then
Sounds like it is.
then it is, and I guess I'm okay.
Second time, I would say, I would vote for it to be a dangerous dog if it happened a second time, you know, it came before us a second time. I would
Yeah.
probably vote in favor of it.
We've
My
had a
impression,
couple that have been second, and
Yeah.
not too often, so.
yeah, my impression that there was no record kept, and so we wouldn't know if that
Well,
was a,
what happens, you know what happens, people say it, but they don't actually report it. You know, they say, well, this dog's bitten before, it's bit me before, well, did you make a report?
yeah,
And there's nothing for us to go on, we can't go on hearsay, so.
yeah.
So I think that's more the,
That's what that's the avenue that I was going after, but if it already is being kept, then it's a moot point then.
I do have a question though, not about potentially dangerous dogs, but I've been hearing a lot of people complaining about dogs barking all night long. Does the city have a policy, and what are the repercussions to the dog owners for that?
If that's an issue, then they're to call the Anoka County Sheriff's Department, 911 or 427-1212, report the barking dog issue. The sheriff will go out there and investigate that. It needs to be reported by 2 people. They can be from the same household or 2 different neighbors. But generally, if there's an issue, the sheriff's department will go out there and address that concern with the owner of the dog, and they can be issued a citation for it.
and it doesn't have to be at night too. I
No.
mean, it can be during the day, if the dog's barking during the day, so.
Oh.
I saw that same
Yeah.
post too. Okay, anything else? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes, the meeting's adjourned. Good evening.